If God gives to you a special ability, are you to use it for your glory or for His? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to another week of Torah studies. This week we are in the final part of chapter 4 and through chapter 7 of Numbers, also chapter 13, verse 2 through the end of that chapter in Judges. Adonai said to Moses, "Take a census of the descendants of Gershon, also by clans and families. Count all those between the ages of 30 through 50, all who enter the corps, doing the work of serving in the tent of meeting." So God, once again, is continuing to assign duties to the families in the tribe of Levi. And Gershon was next up, and then the group of Merari clans. These guys were responsible for transporting loads and serving Aaron and his sons. They had everything from the crossbars, the frames, the posts, the sockets of the tabernacle, posts surrounding the courtyard, their sockets, tent pegs, ropes, and other accessories, everything having to do with the service. They were assigned particular loads to specific people by name. And so God not only has the details about how things are to be done, but He has it down specifically to the people that will be responsible for each of those chores. And the family of Gershon yielded 2,630 people. Merari had 3,200 people. And so the group of Levi had 8,580 people. So God was very clear as to who's going to do what, and they had a very huge responsibility, specifically since they're setting up a tabernacle, which represents the tabernacle in heaven. And so they are tasked with these chores, but fantastically, they are given them down to the person. Now, chapter 7, verse 1, it says, "Order the people to expel from the camp everyone who has sarat, everyone with a discharge, everyone is unclean because of touching a corpse." In other words, they're now going to separate out of the camp clean and unclean people. And we had mentioned what sarat was before. Modern day term is leprosy, but specifically it was God showed outwardly a person's insides of how they were behaving. He does not like liars and babblers and gossipers, and so He showed that outwardly. And so so they were to live outside the camp to keep the camp clean. And also they put anybody that was unclean. So they had specific days and times that they were going to be outside the camp. And the people with sarat, unless they were cured, would remain outside of the camp. So they would be outsiders all the way until they passed away. And so the next section talks about the spirit of jealousy. In the verse 11, it says, "Adonai said to Moses, tell the people of Israel, if a man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, that is, if another man goes to bed with her without her husband's knowledge, and she becomes impure secretly, and there is no witness against her, and she was not caught in the act, then if the spirit of jealousy comes over him, he is jealous of his wife, and she becomes impure, or for that matter, if the spirit of jealousy comes over him, and he is jealous of his wife, and she has not become impure." So in other words, they need to determine if a man became jealous of his wife, whether she was guilty or innocent. And there's quite a ritual for this situation, but basically she's going to drink a drink and confess with her mouth that she'll either be cursed or she'll be exonerated from this accusation. If she was guilty, her private parts would shrivel and her abdomen would swell. And if not, she would move on like nothing happened. So pretty amazing that this was required, and that there's actually a spirit of jealousy. And it's not like a feeling, but there's an actual spirit that comes over a person of jealousy. We won't get into that today, but just interesting that is not only an actual thing that can happen. This was a law for jealousy, and so um, pretty amazing. I just in terms of determining that situation, God didn't let anything slip by, and so to think that He would have, it's very clear that He is very much about details. He's also knows everything that's going on, and to allow a spirit to come over a person to determine that guilt and innocence is pretty amazing. So um, let's see. Also, I wanted to point out verse 5. It says, "Tell the people of Israel, when a man and a woman commits any kind of sin against another person, thus breaks faith with Adonai, he incurs guilt, and he must confess the sin which he has committed, and must make full restitution for his guilt, and add 20% and give it to the victim of his sin. But if the person has no relative to whom restitution can be made for guilt, what is given in restitution for guilt will belong to Adonai, and that is to the priest, in addition to the ram atonement through which atonement is made for him." When you committed an act against someone else in a sinful way, God wanted not only the restitution, but He wanted additional offering to be given, so that there might be a little bit of hardship on you for committing the sin in the first place. Just simply put, if you stole $100 from someone and you're guilty of that, God wanted you to restore $120 for your penalty. And so, in all fairness, that's correct. The justice system today is just, one lawyer trying to beat the other lawyer and trying to get around what's gone on, and it gets lost in the shuffle. And we're not going to talk about that today, but if our systems follow what God had put in place, we probably wouldn't have much in the way of courts and problems in the court, because it's pretty clear as to how things would have been handled even today. And a lot of these things can be translated to modern very easily. You steal, you return not only the amount plus 20%, and maybe next time you'll consider something different. And they had prisons just like we do today, and there's called debtors prisons, and so you served your time based on if you couldn't pay back that debt. And so that's not of today, but just making you aware that does exist. So in the Bible, so chapter 6 verse 1, Adonai said to Moses, "Tell the people of Israel, either man or woman makes a special kind of vow, the vow of the Nazarite, consecrating himself to Adonai, he is to abstain from wine and other intoxicating liquor. He is not to drink vinegar from either source. He is not to drink grape juice. He is not to eat grapes or raisins. As long as he remains a Nazarite, he is to eat nothing derived from the grapevine, not even grape skins or seeds. Throughout the period of his vow as a Nazarite, he is to not shave his head until the end of the time which he consecrated himself to Adonai. He is to be holy. He is to let his hair on his head grow long. Throughout the period which he has consecrated himself to Adonai, he is not to approach a corpse. He is not to make himself unclean for his father, mother, brother, or sister when they die, since the consecration to Adonai is on his head. Throughout the time that he is being a Nazarite, he is holy for Adonai." So this is the law of the Nazarite. It goes on to other things. If he does become unclean, that will restart, and until he has completed the vow of a Nazarite. And so, interestingly, we're going to move to chapter 13 of Judges, and then we'll come back and finish up Numbers. Verse 2 in chapter 13, it says, "There was a man from Zorah, from the family of Dan, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren, childless. The angel of Adonai appeared to the woman and said to her, 'Listen, you are barren, you haven't had a child, but you will conceive and bear a son. Now therefore be careful not to drink any wine or other intoxicating drink. Don't eat anything unclean. For indeed you will conceive and bear a son. No razor is to touch his head, because the child will be a Nazarite for God from the womb. Moreover, he will begin to rescue Israel from the power of the Philistines. So I started off today by saying, if someone is given a special gift from God, are they to do it for their glory or for God's glory? Samson is who we're talking about here, and the story of Samson is one of very interesting intrigue. It goes on. The reason this is tied today is that here's a Nazarite from birth. So God was giving him a blessing of being a Nazarite right from the beginning. Manoach and his wife, she got to see the angel of the Lord, but he didn't. So he challenges God. God comes back, tells him the same thing, and they follow what's being asked. Now Samson grew. This is in verse 14, and Adonai blessed him. The spirit of Adonai began to stir him, and he was in the camp of Dan between Zor and Eshtaol. At this time, judges ruled the land. There wasn't a king, there was just judges. So they would be the leader of the tribes, and people would come to them for protection and or to resolve an issue. At this point in time, the Philistines were ruling the Israelites in a very mean-spirited way. And Samson was raised up to remove the Philistines from this situation. Now, the story goes on that he fights the Philistines. He wants to get married to one of them. They trick him, and the best man basically marries him. And his parents didn't want him to do it in the first place, but God had ordained these things to happen. And them being not aware of all of this, Samson went on to destroy these people. And he also went down and met, as we all know, Delilah. And so Delilah, in so many words, manipulated Samson to find out why he was so strong. This dude was able to do things that no other person was. And through a series of mischievous events by her, he slowly but surely told him what his strength was about. And it came through his hair. And that was a vow that he had committed, or his parents had committed to God, that he would never shave his head. And that's where his strength came from. Well, she finally believes that he's telling the truth, and I don't know how, but he was asleep and she was able to cut his hair. That being said, they took him and basically ridiculed him, made fun of him, poked out his eyes, and his last act on this earth, he asked God to give him strength because his hair was starting to grow back, and God honored that, and he was able to destroy all of the Philistines in a temple worship that he was brought to be the mascot for entertainment. Samson was given a mighty gift, and he took it for granted until it was taken away. And also, he did more to affect the difficulty of watching a man run alongside God, but never really honor him in a lot of ways. And so I'm not here judging Samson. He was placed on this planet for a specific reason, but he was set aside as a Nazarite from birth. Samuel is considered to be also a Nazarite, and he is considered one of the most amazing prophets that God had placed into service, next to Elijah and Elisha. Samuel was the last judge before the people demanded a king, and that's a whole nother story, but that goes into David and other things, other kings. But Samuel was the last great prophet. His mom, who was also barren, asked God for the blessing of a child, and she said that she would dedicate him to the Lord. God accepted that. She became pregnant, and she did exactly that. She took him to the high priest, and any rate, there's a man that followed God and honored him, and God blessed him throughout his life. And here's Samson, lost his life early, but he lived for himself. And so I don't know if Samson's in heaven. I imagine that he probably is, giving a deathbed confession basically. But I don't know how God operates for him in that time because he was judge. So that being said, we're going to move back to Numbers now. And I'm going to skip over the last section of chapter 6, and I wanted to go into chapter 7 and just kind of talk about, this is a long chapter, and it's about each of the tribes. We're going to bring, after they finish this census now, each tribe is now going to bring an offering to Adonai, and they broke it down by day, by tribe. And it's repetitive, and it's going to repeat the same thing with a different person presenting. And this is how detailed God is, down to the tribe, exactly what they did, and that each one did this. And so verse 4, chapter 7 says, Adonai told Moses, receive these from them. That says these are the offerings. They are to be used for the service in the tent of meeting. Give them to the Levites, to each as needed for his duties. So Moses took wagons, oxen, and gave them to the Levites. He gave them 2 wagons, 4 oxen for the descendants of Gershon, in keeping with the needs of their duties. 4 wagons, 8 oxen he gave to the descendants of Merari, in keeping with the needs of their duties, directed by Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. But to the descendants of Gad he gave none, because their duties involved holy articles which they carried on their shoulders. And so this was the offering that was dedicated to the altar on the day it was anointed. The leaders brought their offering before the altar of Adonai and said to Moses, they are to present their offerings and dedicate the altar, each leader on his own day. So the first tribe was Judah, and he presented the offering on day 1. He offered 1 silver dish weighing 130 shekels, 3 3/4 pounds, 1 silver basin, 70 shekels, using the sanctuary shekel, 1 3/4 pounds, both full of fine flour mixed with olive oil for grain offering, 1 gold pan of 10 shekels, 1/4 pound, full of incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb in its first year for the burnt offering, 1 male goat for the sin offering, and for sacrifice a peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs in their first year. This was the offering from the tribe of Judah. And so it keeps going through each of the tribes 12 separate times, and God recorded it through Moses every day. And so again, it becomes a little bit repetitive in the sense that it's going to be the same thing. You're going to read the same thing for each tribe. And then at the end, the summary was, this was the offer for dedication. So this is verse 84. The altar which was given by the leaders of Israel on the day of anointing, 12 silver dishes, 12 silver pans, 12 gold basins, each silver dish weighed 130 shekels, etc. And it went down to, repeated all of it, multiplied by 12. And then when Moses went to the tent of meeting in order to speak with Adonai, he heard the voice speaking to him from the ark cover of the testimony, for between the 2 cherubim he spoke to him. So they haven't moved yet. The tent of meeting is still set up for Moses to talk to God. And this is now just all, here's what's going on. This is what we just dedicated all of the articles to God. And so God was all about making sure that things were done in a proper order. And I want to finish today with a blessing that Adonai had said to Moses that Aaron was to say over the people every day. And so here's what he is to say. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face shine upon you and show his favor. May Adonai lift his face towards you and give you peace. In this way you put the name of the people of Israel, so that I will bless them. And that's verse 22 of chapter 6 of Numbers. And so I will do my best to do the Hebrew way of saying it is Vivarake Adonai Vayish Remeku Adonai Panav Eleke Vi Kuneka Yisa Adonai Panav Eleke Vayashem Ilika Shalom. I know that there's probably a better way to do that because I know it, you can sing it, and the church I was attending, they definitely did that each and every day that we had service. And so all that to say is it's a beautiful blessing. It's a great one to end today with, and look forward to seeing everybody next week. We'll continue our book of Numbers. Thank you so much.